Good day. My name is Mahachi Chatibura. I'm from the University of Botswana. I'll be presenting to you a paper on the appraisal of TripAdvisor reviews during the COVID-19 crisis in Botswana. As of 10 November 2020, there were over 50.5 million confirmed infections and over 1.2 million deaths arising from the novel coronavirus. The emergence of the virus has presented undue pressure on the tourism industry on both the supply and the demand side. On the supply side, a number of accommodation, catering, and leisure facilities have closed, whilst travelers have faced restrictions on travel and border crossings on the demand side. The impact of the virus on countries has been negative, and most countries have reacted differently to the pandemic. Despite the increasing coverage of publications dedicated to COVID-19 and tourism, there is limited literature on travelers' reactions to the pandemic. There is also limited crisis-related research from developing nations such as Botswana. The few studies that have been undertaken were from developed countries and continents such as Asia, Europe, and the United States. Botswana is a developing country in Southern Africa, and it serves as an important point of reference in this case because it is where crisis-related research could be undertaken. Botswana is one of the first countries as well that had a swift response to the pandemic. The country closed its international borders on the 24th of March. It also had its first confirmed COVID-19 case reported on the 30th of March 2020, after which a state of emergency was declared and an initial 28-day lockdown introduced from the 2nd of April 2020. To partially reopen and exit the lockdown, the country later introduced 9 COVID zones. These are areas demarcated across the country in response to the pandemic, and the country also introduced permits for travel across the zones, although movement within zones did not require a permit from May the 22nd. Between July and August 2020, the National Tourism Organization for Botswana, Botswana Tourism Organization, embarked on a massive campaign to promote domestic tourism during the crisis through the Rediscover Botswana expedition. As a result of their efforts, a number of tourist facilities opened for domestic travel, and over 10,000 visitors traveled in September alone during the independence holidays. Botswana, just like the rest of the other international destinations, is easing its travel restrictions. Air travel has resumed at key international airports. However, travelers are expected to abide by strict health and screening measures as implemented at all ports of entry. The purpose of this paper is to provide a rapid review of travelers' comments on TripAdvisor as the pandemic unfolds in Botswana. So the paper is important from 3 perspectives. First, from the tourism demand side of view, because research is very limited on that case. It is also important from a developing country perspective because, again, crisis-related research is limited in such contexts. It also looks at the earliest period of the pandemic in Botswana. The method that was used to collect data was text mining, which is often useful for discovering meaningful patterns in data. 5 keywords were used: coronavirus, corona, COVID, pandemic, and virus. And these were used on a TripAdvisor site for Botswana. Botswana is one of Africa's best destinations for the Big Five. It also was awarded the World Travel and Tourism Council Tourism for Tomorrow Destination Award in 2017, and it was awarded as the best travel destination for 2016 by Lonely Planet. The reviews that I looked at were restricted to a period between March, when the country closed its international borders, to November 17th at the time of data collection, and just a few days after international air travel had resumed. Using text mining involved retrieving the reviews manually by copying and pasting them onto Word documents. 33 reviews were captured from 22 facilities. Each review was exported to QDA Miner 6 and labeled as a case. Sentences were then used as the unit of analysis, and a total of 284 sentences were reviewed. Each sentence was coded manually in the software, and this was based on the author's intuition and interpretive ability. The results were analyzed using descriptive statistics, charts, and bubble diagrams. The results were also analyzed for relationship analysis using the coding occurrences tool in QDA Miner. And the results were presented using concept maps and network graphs. The descriptive statistics that were retrieved from the analysis were restricted to accommodation facilities, because these are the only ones that contained the 5 keywords. The accommodation facilities were grouped into hotels, specialty lodges, camping grounds, bed and breakfast, and cottages. But most of these reviews were emanating from lodges, followed by camping grounds and specialty lodgings. Most of the people that posted their reviews were also traveling as a family. This was accounted by 40% of them. 36% did not indicate, whilst others were traveling for business and others were traveling as couples. Most of the sentences generated were written in August, March, and October. That was 27%, 26%, and 22% respectively. The codes that were developed from the sentences were 18. 18 codes were developed, and the code with the highest frequency of sentences was compliments, recommendations, and revisit intentions, which was created from sentences such as "I will not hesitate to stay there again during the pandemic," "I recommend everyone to visit," or "I hope to come back with more family and friends." Most of these sentences came from people that were staying at lodges, followed by those staying at hotels, camping grounds, specialty lodgings, at the cottage, and at the bed and breakfast facility. The code with the second highest frequency was trip experience, game viewing, and hunting. It was made out of sentences such as "I'd never seen a leopard before in my life," and "we also found a pride of 12 lions one morning." "We saw our only leopard of the trip, our first evening." And most of these sentences were extracted from specialty lodgings, lodges, and camping grounds. The third code with the highest frequency was great place and location, which was developed out of sentences such as "the location is good because of its proximity to the city center," and other sentences such as "the hotel is located in the heart of the city, which is a perfect location." Using a word cloud to display the frequency also showed similar results, where compliments, recommendations, and revisit intentions received the highest frequency in the wet cloud, followed by trip experience, game viewing and hunting, and great place and location, as shown in the wet cloud. Furthermore, relationship analysis was conducted, and the results were presented using a 2D concept map. We can actually see that the code for compliments, recommendations, and revisit intentions was in close proximity to good and excellent food service. We can also see from the map that trip experience, game viewing and hunting was close to the code friendly, efficient, and professional staff. Again, looking at the 3 codes with the highest frequency, and after having conducted link analysis, some of the factors or variables that had close proximity to the 3 codes are also presented. Compliments, recommendations, and revisit intentions were in close proximity to good and excellent food service. They were also in close proximity to friendly, efficient, and professional staff, good and excellent overall staff, and great place and location. Similarly, code 2, which is about trip experiences, game viewing, and hunting, was in close proximity to good and excellent food service, compliments, recommendations, and revisit intentions, great place and location, and friendly, efficient, and professional staff. The 3rd code, great place and location, was in close proximity to the 4 codes as well, which are compliments, recommendations, and revisit intentions, good and excellent food service, friendly, efficient, and professional staff, and trip experience, game viewing, and hunting. So looking at the findings, we can actually see that the sentences that were extracted from March, August, and October were the highest in frequency than in the other months, and this corresponds to the lockdown and the domestic tourism campaigns that were introduced in the country. We also realized that the reviewers described to a large extent their appreciation of the stay during the crisis, indicating that they would recommend and revisit the facility in future, as expressed in Code 1. However, looking at codes that had a more likely relationship to COVID-19, such as fear and anxiety, disrupted and limited service, compliance with COVID protocols, and trip disruptions, cancellations, and refunds, I realized that these codes had some of the lowest frequencies, and this finding to some extent contradicts that of Uga and Akbiek's study, where 40.8% of the travelers commented on cancelling their travel or flights in response to the pandemic. Although travelers in Botswana did comment on cancellations and trip disruptions, these were limited to the earliest periods of the pandemic. 44% of the sentences in the code trip disruptions, cancellations, and refunds were recorded in March. And to some extent, this finding resonates with literature on the immediate impact of the virus on travel, because such expressions were usually highlighted during the earliest periods of the pandemic, and this is also the same in the case of Botswana. The findings also reflect that the code compliments, recommendations, and revisit intentions occurred in close proximity to at least 4 codes, implying that accommodation managers in Botswana should maintain or enhance these factors, because the factors are equally important during the COVID-19 period. as much as they were before the pre-COVID-19, and they will also continue being an essential factor after COVID when travel is fully resuscitated. The results from the code Trip Experience Game Viewing and Hunting reflects that service and the ultimate experience of tourists is reliant on friendly and efficient and professional staff. And this is also in support with existing literature where, for instance, tourist satisfaction is based on satisfaction with tour guiding services. The third code, the Great Place and Location, because it occurred in close proximity with trip experience, game viewing and hunting, and the other factors as highlighted, implies that travelers are looking for locations that offer the best experience, especially with game viewing and hunting, even amidst the pandemic. And they will also recommend these places when satisfied. So in conclusion, the paper has demonstrated that text mining and online reviews can reliably be used to understand travelers' reactions or reflections during a crisis. However, the comments that were specific to COVID-19, such as anxiety and fear, trip disruptions, cancellations, and refunds, were very limited. However, such findings allay the uncertainty that is associated with travel during the pandemic, especially in Botswana, because it relies on regional and international tourism markets. And this finding is also important in the fact that Botswana has recently resumed international travel. So to some extent, the fear or the uncertainty associated with travel is put aside. One limitation that was faced in this study was that the reviews were very limited in terms of the numbers that were generated, and the fact that only five keywords were used to extract those reviews. A more comprehensive study can be undertaken using more keywords, for instance, and from more developing country perspectives. But despite the limitations that have been highlighted, the research is important in the context of COVID-19 and tourism in the country, because it highlights the reactions or the comments of travelers as they travel during the crisis in the country. And to some extent, such findings are important to accommodation managers as they prepare to reopen and to resuscitate the tourism industry in the country. Thank you so much. If there are any questions, I can respond to those. Thank you so much.